2-0 series lead. I told you before the Minnesota Wild weren't going to go easily against the Golden Knights, and that's exactly the pushback that we got in game 2 as well.
Yeah, when it came to picking the one series we weren't going to spend a full topic on today, I'm sorry, Canes fans, but it's an easy choice. You guys are just going to keep rolling. And for Devils fans, view it like sympathy. We're just not going to make you relive the first 2 games of this series. But let's start things off with the defending Stanley Cup champions, Frank, who looked exactly like that. The defending Stanley Cup champions, a big W for the Florida Panthers as they rolled into Tampa Bay and took game 1 of the series. 4 unanswered goals, including back-to-back power play goals from Matt Tkachuk, which is a bit of an interesting conversation, Frank, when people hear all the rumblings that, the league was kind of shaking a finger at teams going, you watch how you're handling your LTIR, and, there's Matt Tkachuk with 3 points after not playing at the end of the regular season. He was dressed in game 1, and he made a big impact.
Yeah, I think maybe the one exception here, and not saying there necessarily is one, and I'd have to do some more reporting on this with the NHL, but the fact that the Panthers had enough cap space to activate him toward the end of the season and did not would lead you to believe that it is purely obviously a health thing, the groin injury stemming back to Four Nations face-off and what he put in to play in that tournament. Look, to see him bounce back. And by the way, Nate Schmidt, I think he had 6 goals all season long, 2 goals in the opener of the series. Pretty impressive stuff from him. But Matthew Tkachuk, full impact. And you see the guys that get on the scoreboard. Brad Marchand, first playoff point as a Florida Panther. Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk. These guys are a handful. I think maybe the most shocking part, though, I didn't get to watch this game at all. I was on a plane last night, but I sent a couple messages while I was in the air. I was like, do the Panthers really have 5 goals on 11 shots on Andrei Vasilevsky? What happened here?
And a couple of them looked weird as well. There was one where Vasilevsky was standing straight up trying to look around bodies, and Tkachuk just basically fired it on the ice and in. Just one thing quickly on Matt Tkachuk. He only played 9:19 at 5-on-5. That was the second fewest minutes on that entire Florida Panthers team. So again, the power play time boosted him up a little bit, but even then, it was the second fewest amongst Panthers forwards in that game. So maybe a sign that he's not at 100%, even though he's making an impact. To the Bolts quickly, Frank, the Vasilevsky thing is the biggest one for me, because a big reason why I picked them to advance and why I believe they could go on a bit of a run is because of the fact Vasilevsky bounced back to his near Vezina caliber form this last season. If he's not at that level, I don't give him much of a shot.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd expect him to get back to being the Andrei Vasilevsky that we all know. So I would say in that case, probably one game, if you're him, that you cross off and you say, all right, let's burn the tape. We're not watching anything from that one, and we're going to be better in game 2. So I'd be quick to, or I wouldn't be quick to write that part of it off. That said, I just feel like so many people heading into these playoffs, the Bolts were the trendy, popular pick. Everyone's all over them saying, look at these injuries for the Panthers. Look at all the hockey that they've played the last few years. I mean, continue to underestimate the Florida Panthers at your own peril.
Yeah, it's totally fair. John Cooper after the game saying, paraphrasing a bit, but he basically goes, whether you lose 6-2 or lose 1-0 in overtime, a loss is a loss this time of year. He kind of said, bungle it up, throw it out. We're back at it on Wednesday, and they are. That is when game 2 of the series will go in Tampa Bay, but Florida has home ice advantage back in their possession in the Battle of Florida. Let's go to Toronto, Frank, where for the first time since 2002, the Toronto Maple Leafs have a 2-0 lead in a playoff series. Max Domi coming up clutch with the OT winner. You talked about Nate Schmidt. How about Domi? Only 8 goals for him in the regular season, but he comes up clutch with the OT winner for Toronto. A night where, Ottawa was the better team, but it's Toronto who gets the win.
Yeah, but I think a huge pushback from the Sens. Look, and first, let me give full marks to the Toronto Maple Leafs. On a night where you played a pretty good first period, and then afterward, the Sens really controlled a lot of the game, and the Leafs were lucky to be in that spot for a stretch of time, to get to OT, to have some nervous energy in the building. The first real sort of pushback from the Sens in this series, and then for Max Domi to deliver. This is a Leaf team that we have not seen. I've said that after game 1. I'll say it again today. Game 1 told such a different story to me for this team. And now history, all the numbers are on their side. Now, I saw the tweet from our friend Pete Blackburn yesterday, and I like literally could not help but laugh when the tweet was something like the Maple Leafs are 10-0 all time with a 2-0 series lead. He just said that's a newfound way for Leaf fans to have their hearts broken. And like, yeah, I'm sure there will be part of that, even if they're up 3-0 in this series, because you don't even have to look that far back to feel that pain. That said, this feels different this time. And to respond the way that they did after that significant pushback from the Sens was very impressive.
Yeah, I'll be a broken record from Monday, but in a different way, that win last night also just felt very mature. Where in the past, if the Leafs were getting outplayed, they were getting dominated. They did not know how to win a game with their B level or anything. It was like they have to play their absolute best and the bounces have to go their way. On the flip side for Ottawa, I agree. A really nice step forward here. You're never really in trouble till you lose at home. And I think they should actually have their heads held pretty high. But for a young team who hasn't played in the playoffs as a group before, it's a lesson in just the fact that, hey, sometimes you need your best and you need the bounces, because just playing good isn't always enough in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Travis Green spoke about that after the game too.
Yeah. And when you have a solid night to then find that extra gear to take it to the next level in OT, that's really the big difference between the playoffs and regular season.
Thought Brady Tkachuk was really good as well. He found the back of the net, had 5 shots on net and 4 hits as well. So he was good. I think that's a positive sign. Allmark was, again, solid as well, made some big saves, even if his save percentage maybe isn't, in air quotes, elite. Thought he was fine as well. But the Leafs are up 2-0 as that series shifts back to Ottawa. And it is a 1-1 series out in Vegas. Frank, we talked about it. You mentioned it briefly off the jump. And listen, it was my prediction, my kind of real stunner in the West was that I think Minnesota is just going to grind down this Vegas team. And after game 1, I was feeling a little uneasy because I was like, damn, Minnesota actually pushed them, but they didn't get the bounces, similar to Ottawa last night. They didn't get the bounces and they're down 1-0. And I thought, that was Minnesota's chance to sort of come out of the series and punch Vegas in the mouth real hard. But they actually ended up doing that last night. A very impressive game 2 from the Wild. They were up 4-0 early on in the second period of that game. Adin Hill was, not great. 4 goals on only 16 shots is an ugly stat line, but a few of them I thought he looked a little bit shaky on as well. For Minnesota, the duo of Kaprizov and Boldy, man, were they ever something last night. Just electric.
I don't know if Pat, did you get the clip of the sauce from Kaprizov and how ridiculous that was on a dime? It was like dropping a quarter in a Coke machine from 85 feet away. It was so nice. And look, Boldy has been very impressive too. Look, I love the stick-to-itiveness that Boldy has in his game, using the size and frame that he has to be a finisher. He's really turned himself into quite a player for the Minnesota Wild. And I think the other thing too is when you think about this team and the physical nature with what they play, like that's a big boy series. Like there's a lot of incredible hits that we've seen so far, and the physicality, it seems to be the most physical of the 8 first round series that we've seen to this point. And I love that the Wild don't back down from that. If anything, they initiate. And so you see someone like a Ryan Hartman in the mix on a near minute by minute basis. Those types of things are what make the playoffs absolutely electric.
Marcus Foligno had 12 hits in this hockey game. That is absolutely insane. He's probably waking up in a Vegas hotel room. Yeah, he took a couple hard ones as well. In the final 40 minutes, after Minnesota had taken their lead, so from when it was, I shouldn't say final 40, final 30, whatever minutes, from when Minnesota went up 4-0 till the end of the game, they got outshot 22-6. But Philip Gustafsson stood tall. Again, Philip Gustafsson had a weird sort of roller coaster year where it was like, whoa, Vezina finalist? Oh boy, does Fleury have to be the starter? Then he was back, and he's continued to roll that into playoff success. If Gustafsson stays at this level and Hill stays at his sort of middling level, he was below 900 in 3 of his last 5 starts in the regular season as well. That's a big swing in this series too.
Yeah, also don't forget like how well Hill started the game last night too. A couple key saves right off the hop. So it could have been worse. But I think a huge message sent from the Minnesota Wild to the Vegas Golden Knights that, hey, we can take your best punch, particularly in the last half of that game, and we're right there with you. And so I think the Wild have the ability to make this a very interesting series for the Golden Knights.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
So that
sauce.
series is 1-1.
Oh,
Oh, it's
just chef's kiss.
It's not exactly the same, but when I see a saucer pass like that, I always think back to whatever it was 2017. Remember that Erik
The
Karlsson pass
Carlson.
from from the goal line, like over 10 or 9 skaters it would have been, then just bing right on his tape. That was nasty.
That was, first round against the Boston Bruins. Never forget it. And that run propelled the Sens to the Eastern Conference Final, which was their last game, Game 7, double overtime in the playoffs all the way until this past weekend.
Yeah. Quite something. All right, we're going to pause the playoff talk for a little bit. Stephen Ellis is our big segment. We're going to talk some prospects. But first, away from the playoffs in the NHL, Frank, we had more off-the-ice news yesterday. Lou Lamoriello is out on Long Island. And for Lamoriello, the 82-year-old who took over as president of the Devils all the way back in 1987, his coaching career began in 1968 in the NCAA. For an 82-year-old, this is likely the end of the line for Lou. And if it is, I mean, man, what a career.
I'm not willing to say that. You can say that
Okay.
at your own peril. Look, we had these same conversations 10 years ago when Ray Shero succeeded him with the New Jersey Devils. We're like, oh, yeah, sure, he's going to be the president of hockey ops, and then he'll just fade away. He's not like, he's sharp as ever. He wants to work, and he's someone that craves being in the middle of it. And look, I think a lot of people would assume that it's natural at this age to take a step back. He's had 2 other stops since then, going to Toronto and then going to New York. And I just refuse to say at this moment in time that this is the last that we've seen from Lou Lamoriello in an NHL executive role. I just don't. I'm sorry. That said, fascinating time for the Islanders. I think change was needed. I think they were in a position where they've been swimming in mediocrity, and they've made a lot of decisions to double, triple, quadruple down on their core. And even as well as this deadline went for the Islanders, the return that they got for Brock Nelson and Cal Ritchie in the first, they still are very likely to re-sign Kyle Palmieri. And so it's like it comes in fits and starts. Either you're ripping the Band-Aid off and you're going totally in that direction, or you're not. And they just seem to kind of be stuck in the middle. And there's a lot of things that hang in the balance. What path will this next general manager take, whoever it is? Will Patrick Waugh be retained? And how aggressive can the Islanders be in fixing, retooling, rebuilding, whatever R word you want to choose, to get this team back into contention? Because they seem to be stuck in neutral.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it, saying they're stuck in neutral. For me, I'd love to see them go a little bit more towards the lines of like how Montreal handled their last GM and front office search, where it's like, okay, put a duo in there who you were kind of just blindly saying like, you have 5 years. Do not worry about turning us into a playoff contender this year or the next year. Let's do things the right way and focus on the process. And they do have some really interesting building blocks, like a fully healthy Matt Barzal at 27 years old. The idea that you can maybe just retool and rebuild for 3 years and then you still have a 30-year-old Matt Barzal, that should be appetizing. You look at their blue line with a guy like Noah Dobson. You keep him around. I know he's an RFA this summer, but sign him long-term, and you kind of have the pillar up front, the pillar on the blue line, and then obviously the pillar between the pipes with Ilya Sorokin. Like, the pieces are there. I just think they need to fix their process a little bit. So I'd like to see them, again, like I said, maybe go in the direction of like what Montreal did with the Gorton and Hughes hiring.
Yeah, come up with a clear and cohesive plan. That's the biggest thing that I think was missing. And maybe they had one that just wasn't being properly communicated, but I think that leads to trouble with your fan base. This is a very attractive job. By all accounts, Scott Malkin, John Ledecky, and also John Collins, as part of their ownership group, they are hands off for the most part. They let you do your job, as Lou Lamoriello did, who had complete and total control. So they're willing to spend. They've got a beautiful arena. They're obviously in a major metro market. There's a lot of really attractive facets to the Islanders and their franchise. they just need someone in there, I think, with a complete and clear vision that's willing to be communicated to everyone.
$28.3 million in projected cap space, all of their picks this year, and a bonus first rounder in next year's draft as well. So they got some assets if they want to make a splash. Again, it's just a matter of if the next GM and if the next front office wants to go the free agent big trade route, or if they want to go, again, eye more on the long-term vision approach. Speaking of the long-term vision, let's talk a little NHL draft, a little NHL prospects with our guy Stephen Ellis. The Next Wave is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, where you can apply for a Charm Diamond Flexity card and get approved for no interest financing on your purchase in minutes. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. Daily Faceoff prospect analyst Stephen Ellis, who dropped his latest top 75 draft rankings earlier on in the week. And since I asked the first question, I get to ask my favorite question, Stephen. Who's your biggest riser so far this year?
So this is the thing about this year's draft class is we've talked kind of a bunch about how it's probably not the deepest, it's probably not the most skilled, it's probably not the most exciting draft class. But the one thing where you look kind of across the board and you look at someone like Anton Frundell, who fell out of the top 10, moved back into the top 10. Ivan Ryabkin, who just basically fell off a cliff and came back. The one I'm looking at here is Riker Lee out of the USHL. And this is someone who very skilled, put up really good numbers in the USHL this year. 68 points in 58 games is pretty impressive. Now, he played at the Shattuck St. Mary's program in the last couple of years, was very good there. I wanted to see what he could do at the USHL. Tougher competition, stronger competition, and he looked really good. He also was a bit more physical than I thought he was going to be. He's not a huge forward, but he goes out there and he competes. You put that all together, there's a lot to like.
Okay, so you kind of touched on him briefly, but I got to ask about Anton Frundell because we've heard a lot of rumblings in recent days and weeks that this is a guy that has maybe even top 3 potential in the eyes of some of these teams. We've heard a ton about Misa and Hagens and Schaefer and everyone else, but what's the story with Anton Frundell?
Frundell is someone who's had to deal with so many injuries. You look at last year, he wasn't part of the U18 Swedish team when they desperately needed him. He wasn't part of the Hlinka Gretzky team, same situation. He got injured again and the season started, and he started the fall. But he's also got the most productive season I think we've ever seen by a draft-eligible player in the second-tier Swedish league. But at the same time, we probably won't see him at the U18 World Championship again, and that's because his team is still playing. So he was named to their initial fuller big roster, but in terms of the U18 roster that got submitted yesterday, he's still not there. He hasn't been loaned out yet. But what you get from him is a guy who's very competitive, a great shot. He's excellent on the power play, and I think if you could just put everything together, he's a extremely talented prospect that could go as high as number 3. I wouldn't pick him as there because I still feel like his defensive game isn't as high as some of the other guys at this point. But you're still looking at someone here who, like, I have Caleb Denoyer at number 5. Frundell could be there. Jackson Smith could be there. Roger McQueen could be there. Like, everybody outside of that top 4 could easily be in that 5th spot. So there's a lot of good competition there. With Frundell, you're getting a guy who loves to shoot, and he could play center, he could play wing. You put that together, there's a lot to like.
Okay, so let me just drill down on exactly what you just said. So are you telling me that you think these top 4, as you see them, in maybe slightly different order, but these are the top 4 you think will end up going, or in that order, or what does it look like? Tell us what your board looks like.
Those are the
like mock draft is different than your rankings, right?
Yes. I still have those top 4 in my top 4. Again, it could really depend on how this draft lottery goes. Like Schaefer, I think, is number 1 if San Jose's picking. Misa's number 1 if Chicago's picking, type thing. Hagens, I know a lot of people have kind of soured on him. I feel like that's a mistake. This is a guy who still put up a point per game in the NCAA, playing all types of situations. That's very difficult to do. It's not Will Smith numbers. It's not Macklin Celebrini numbers or Adam Fantilli numbers, but it's still impressive. I like Porter Martone. He's probably the guy I've watched the most in this draft class. So competitive. But then again, I've said in the past, it's the top 4 that really stand out. I feel like 5th to 10th has really caught up to someone like Porter Martone. And it's because the gap is a lot closer. And I think that's because everyone brings something different to the table. Roger McQueen, and you talked about it last time I was on, Frank, about we can't really ignore him because he didn't play a ton this year. But I think in this case, the end of the season for him was a lot better than when he first returned from his injury. That's promising. He's got a high ceiling. Jake O'Brien's one of the smartest guys in this draft. Jackson Smith, I got a feature about him coming tomorrow. He's a future top pairing defenseman. Caleb Denoyer is a proven winner at all levels. Frundell is just a great shooter. It really just depends on what that team in fifth wants the most, I think, is how that order goes.
Any notable re-entry players in this year's draft? I know that we're moving probably out of the first round with this question here and further down your draft board and your rankings, but anyone in that category?
It's kind of an interesting one here because this year there's not a ton of really great ones. I'm thinking Epperson out of Saginaw is a guy that you really got to look out there, and he's someone who played with the U.S. National Team Development Program, was kind of a depth guy. He was actually sent down to the U17 team, but then really went out there and impressed this year in Saginaw. Just did so many great things. And you look at those numbers, 80 points for a guy that didn't look like a point producer at any level heading into this. And that also just really shows you how hard it could be being a depth guy on the NTDP team where there's all this great talent. He kind of got shuffled out. He ended up becoming a fourth liner and eventually fell down to the U17 team, which is a difficult situation when that happens, when you've been playing with these guys for 2 years and you kind of get demoted. Goes to Saginaw, makes the most of his opportunities, a great playmaker, really good in the power play. I could see him being a second round pick here.
We got one in the YouTube chat. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Frank.
No, just a quick question. Okay, so you see this point total and it's obviously like 80 points. You're like, oh, that's really impressive. And then you see there's been some really interesting league conversions. Like you see someone like Jack Pridham go from out west, joining the OHL, and then becomes a point per game player. And you go how do you go from a supposed lesser junior league and then go to a major junior league and put up more points than you were elsewhere? I guess just an overall philosophical question. Should we be looking at point production and holding it in different regard than we typically would have maybe a few years ago?
See, a big point improvement is obviously one thing, but for me, and I know a lot of other scouts, it's not the points that are what's important. It's the translatable skills. And when you look at Epperson, it's the hockey sense, it's the playmaking. And that's what you see kind of like Jack Pridham, where you look at the numbers last year and you watched him play. It's like, oh, this guy's really good. He should be putting up better numbers. But it felt like a lot of the plays would die because he just didn't have the talent to play with. He goes to the OHL. He's surrounded by much better players. The point production looks great. And yeah, it definitely looks a bit wonky. But at the same time, it's the translatable skills were always there. This is a guy who could be a good skater. He's smart. And I always say, for me, if you're a smart prospect, you're going to make it work. You're going to find a role somewhere. A lot of the smartest players on any given team are those fourth line guys because they have to find different ways to be so skilled. Like Connor McDavid could probably turn his brain off for a week and still score a bunch of goals because he's Connor McDavid. He's got that pure talent. But the guys deep in our lineup have to work harder. So when you get that work ethic, you got the hockey IQ, the guys who can just read plays so well, you're going to be fine. And so, yeah, that's why you got to look past the stats because you see so many of these guys who will go on these absolute heaters in the CHL and not do anything to the next level. Andrew Cristall is one that concerns me a bit because he's been so productive in the WHL. Is that going to translate to the NHL as a smaller player? It's a bit more difficult, but I feel like he's got the hockey sense that he should be able to make it work, he's not going to be a top line player in the NHL. So yeah, you got to look past the points. You got to be able to see what else you bring to the table. But that's why I like Epperson, because to me, he's just extremely smart. He always seems to be one play ahead of everybody. And that's why those numbers were as good as they were.
Okay, quick one from the YouTube chat. Pat, if we could flash up the top 10 again. Tommy dropped in. How many of these players in your top 5, top 10 do you view as being potentially ready to jump into an NHL lineup next season?
I would pick 0. I wouldn't be surprised if not one player is in the NHL. And it's not a knock against the class. It's like Schaefer's missed most of the year. Misa, I think, has a chance, but man, that's a guy I would love to go see play in the NCAA next year, just to go see him really bulk up and see what he could do there, things like that. But like, if I had to take a guess, Misa is probably the best option to go to the NHL, but I'm always on the board of let the guys develop. Don't rush them.
All right.
Yeah. Last one for you.
Just because
the correct answer is 0.
Yeah. The U18s begin in less than an hour. Really quickly, a player to watch and who's your pick to win?
William Moore on USA, I think he's, again, really smart player, not flashy, not great numbers, but he's just every level I've watched him play dating back to his U14 days. That's a guy who outthinks everybody out there. But Canada looks like the team to beat. We could see them get Cole Reshny, Keaton Verhoff, and Landon Dupont, the top prospect for 2027. We'll see what happens there. But I'm looking at Canada, especially in a year where the Americans just don't look as good. Canada seems to be the team to beat.
Landon Dupont, another high-end prospect that looks to be coming out of the WHL. Steven, appreciate your time, man. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks so much.
All right, Frank, ask DFO inbox question. Pressure is a funny word this time of year, but you have the Habs down 1-0, the Oilers down 1-0, and now the Lightning down 1-0. Those are the three teams trailing 1-0 in their series. Which one is facing the most pressure in their game two of which will happen tonight?
I'm going to say the Lightning.
All right.
I'm going to say if the Lightning go down 2-0 to the Panthers, losing both games at home, say goodnight.
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to disagree with that one. Again, you're the old cliche, right? Never in trouble till you lose at home. If you lose both at home, oh boy, giddy up. Tonight, Montreal, Washington, Dallas, Colorado, Edmonton, and LA. That ties in nicely to our daily face-off bets brought to you by Bet365. Want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs at Bet365? They got you. From game props to player props, totals, and money line. You can even bet on futures like series winner, conference champions, and of course the Stanley Cup champion. Whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game. An official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs, must be 19 or older. Couple of plays for tonight. I do think the Oilers bounce back. I do think there will be a lot of goals once again, and I do think Connor McDavid will continue to just be in the video game mode we saw in the third period. So those three played together is plus 350. And I like the Avs again tonight. Talking to Jesse yesterday, hearing your thoughts on the series, Frank, I think as this thing shifts back to Colorado, we'll see the Avs kind of go pedal down. And the big boost, Gabe Landeskog, expected to play, according to Jared Bednar?
Yeah, I think very likely to play. Home ice is one thing. To make that return in your own building, I think is huge. And, in talking to Jesse Montano and others following game two, where, he's in warm up and they changed the A on the sweater for Devon Toews, I think he wanted to go through his full routine, and that the fact that Miles Wood was told a day ahead of time, that was all part of the plan.
Yeah, so I like the Avs puck line. It's real juicy tonight. I could probably throw in any any Nathan McKinnon prop you'd like into that one as well. Wrapping up the show with a little bit of garbage time, Frank, and a story that you shared from the Associated Press. Czech leaders condemn the threats against NHL great Dominik Hasek. The second paragraph from this story, Dmitry Medvedev, who is currently the deputy head of Russia's Security Council, chaired by President Vladimir Putin, said through his assistant that Hasek suffers from Russia-phobia and should be careful while crossing roads and should not drink beer in unverified places. That is a scary thing to be hearing.
Yeah, and if you've been following along, which I'm sure you have, Dominik Hasek has been a very outspoken critic of Russia and their unprovoked attack on Ukraine, and understandably so. I think maybe the one undercurrent of the NHL landscape that people here in North America don't really have a full appreciation for is how on edge and understandably concerned that Finns, Swedes, Czechs, a lot of the Eastern European players in the NHL are concerned about their countries. Like, look, Finland's been attacked by Russia before. They share a border. And it's a very big topic of conversation in NHL locker rooms. Dominik Hasek has just been one of the most out there and present, really condemning at every opportunity and using his voice and platform to try and continue to share that message. And so he's been advocating against the NHL celebrating Alex Ovechkin, which I think is a bridge too far. But he's also been saying, hey, Russian players shouldn't be in the next tournaments that we play with the IOC and the IAHF. And so it's been the hockey part, but then also now you see Russia paying attention, and to hear things like that, it makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, especially because Russia has a pretty good way of making people disappear.
Yeah. Well said, Frank. All right, that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Everybody in the YouTube, appreciate your questions. As always, we will be back tomorrow, noon Eastern, to keep on talking playoffs. We'll see you then. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content. From daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.